Thanks everyone for coming. There's so many people here. So I run ProductTank in Bristol, and we have quite a lot of people signed up to ProductTank, but we get like a huge drop-off rate. So when it said 37 people, I was expecting like maybe 10, and there's loads of you. So thanks for coming out. Who am I? So I'm doing a talk on working with difficult people. Oh, here we go. There we go. Novice with this. So I've had 39 years of experience working with difficult people, which is one of the reasons why I chose this subject. I was thinking, it'd be really good to get out and do a bit of talking. I run ProductTank in Bristol, and I think I've done one talk there. And the whole reason that I set it up, well, not the whole reason, but one of the reasons was so that I could do a bit more kind of talking as well and practice my public speaking and stuff. So, but yeah, I was having a think about like, what could I say that would be interesting and useful to everyone else? And in thinking about that, I was like wondering, what people have said to me, what feedback have I had in the past around my working with them? And what I get a lot of, or what I've had a lot of in my career is, oh, hey, you're really good at working with like difficult people. Can you go and like manage this team or this person and sort this situation out because I'm struggling with it? So I thought, maybe I should have a little think about how I actually do that and put a talk together. So hence, that's why I'm here tonight. I'm also the product director at a company called Symec, and I am the podcast co-host with Randy for the Mind the Product podcast. So, so also on the experience, this 39 years experience of working with difficult people, the reason why I say 39 years, and that this is going to be very kind of open and transparent, and I'm one of these people that kind of tends to overshare slightly, so this is definitely going to be a bit of an overshare, so I apologise if it makes anyone feel uncomfortable. And so, yeah, lots of experience with difficult situations and then many other difficult situations, as I will tell you about. But first of all, I kind of wanted to like define what constitutes a difficult person to work with. And this is like some of the stuff that I came up with from my experience. And I've worked in lots of different companies. I've kind of got a bit of a reputation for like flitting around a little bit, but it's mainly because I've worked in startups or worked on projects where it's, there's been a finite amount of time for me to go in, or I've been asked to come in and solve a particular problem. So I have moved around a little bit. I've got some of these traits of difficult people. I'll just quickly go through sort of where this has come from. So a guy called who I worked with at a publishing company. I was talking to a developer, and I was asking him about something that he was working on. This guy, he didn't like what I was doing, so he came and took me by the shoulders like this from behind and pointed me at a wall, and then walked off and went to speak to the developer. So the one instance. I had another guy who was having like stand-up blazing rows with the developers, taking them outside to continue the row. I was like, this is like 1 week into this job, and it was a 5-story building. So they started at the top, went all the way down the different stories, and then out into the street and carried on shouting at each other. So yeah, that was another example. I had a guy called who was very, very kind of aggressive in his approach. And by this point, this was kind of further on in my career. And I didn't really, it kind of washed over me a little bit, his attitude. And I didn't really realise what he was being like until after one sort of meeting that I had with him with 2 of the other developers that I was working with. They said to me afterwards, like, they were, one of the guys was kind of shaking slightly and was a bit like, I am so angry about how he was just talking to you. And I was like, really? Oh, I didn't even notice. So yeah, that was interesting. I've had, there was a guy called who was like, basically told me I was too inexperienced and he wouldn't talk to me and he would only talk to other people in the room. A girl called who like spread malicious rumours about things that I'd said. Anyway, I feel like I'm going on too much, so I'm going to stop there. So yeah, this is not like everyone feels sorry for me. I've had such a hard life. So these are sort of some of the traits that I had. But like all good researcher or presenter, I also went to Twitter and asked everyone else on Twitter, what constitutes a difficult person to work with in their view. And I got all of these other, I'm going to have to click this is bad. It was meant to just do all of them at the same time. So yeah, is there anything, this is like, oh, there we go. Is there anything that you feel is missing on here? Is there anything that you've experienced that has been really, really difficult, has resulted in a very difficult situation for you to kind of manage? Or do you think there was actually more on Twitter actually. I ran out of space and and I didn't manage to capture everything. Okay, well, I'm just going to assume that I've got most of it down. So what happens when we experience difficult? Oh God, you can tell that I didn't actually like look at the animations after I put them on. I was like, yeah, that looks like it'll be fun. I'll just go with that. So I think we tend to kind of take it personally as our initial reaction. If it is something quite jarring that's happened, in a conversation or whatever, it can affect us emotionally and in that emotion sort of physically as well. We tend to judge the person for behaving that way and going, wow, what a complete and utter dickhead, usually. We also kind of make up stories, I think, for the behaviour and try and justify it or kind of make sense of it. So if someone's been really rude to you, or if someone's spoken in a certain way, you can kind of like say, oh, I only just did this thing and they did that and they're being completely unreasonable and, what are they being like, and it's not fair, and we kind of have this internal dialogue that goes on. And I think this is kind of one of the things that can be a little bit dangerous because it can escalate our sort of feelings about the situation. We do other stuff too. I can tell you what in a second. Oh, there we go. We procrastinate about revenge. Who here has had a difficult situation and then gone, I'm going to get them. I'm going to get them back. I'm going to teach them a lesson. No one? Anyone? Everyone. Okay. I'm just going to... Oh, now I have to do this whole thing. This is like such a bad idea. I'm taking the animations off the slides. What was the last thing we do? Oh yeah, and we talk about it with other people because sharing is caring, right? We want to get it off our chest, so we want to talk about it. So how do we resolve this? I've got a nice picture. There we go. Nice picture of resolving a problem. So I think the first thing to do is to have some empathy. He was like totally freaking out. He was really upset with the whole dev team. And I took him aside after the kind of, they stopped shouting at each other because I was actually a little bit terrified at the time. And brought him into the boardroom and I was like, right, tell me what's going on. Like, why are you losing your shit? And he basically like completely like opened up and sort of let out a whole load of world of pain that he was going through. They'd let him down before. There was real trouble because they needed more investment and they had to deliver a load of stuff so that the investors were happy. He didn't know how to manage this team. He was getting no kind of communication from them, and he was he was in a kind of a bit of a world of pain. So I think trying to understand where that person's coming from would be my first sort of recommendation. Like, try and put yourself in their shoes, even if it's them directing their discomfort or their kind of whatever it is, their difficultness towards you. It's like trying to put yourself in their position, and sort of understand the periphery of like what's going on. I mean, you're all like product people, right? So you know how to be empathetic, hopefully. And kind of in doing this research as well, I think you need to take it quite slowly. You need to ask the right questions, but not be too sort of like, tell me everything now, tell me your life story now. It's like, building up time and space to learn more and more about that person and what's going on in their life. And depending on the person as well, it could take 5 minutes. Like with me, I'll just tell you everything straight away. Or it could take, weeks to gain the trust of that person to enable you to learn enough to know what's going on. I've just realised that we didn't do the timer, so I've still got 20 minutes.
It's on the laptop.
Oh yeah. You can tell how often I do this. Oh, now I've pressed it twice and it's going to go to the next one. No, it didn't. Okay, and then I have this kind of like this thing about being generous. So if someone's being really difficult with me, and I'm thinking about this story that that I used to make up, I try and switch this story. So it's not like they have a problem with me. It's like they have a problem and they're taking it out on me for some reason, and actually I don't have a problem and I'm quite happy and I'm like fine in myself. So I'll take this attitude that I'm getting, whatever it is, and when they've calmed down, or when at another time, I'll try and understand what's going on to make them behave this way, and to make this situation occur. So it's that kind of generosity in understanding how, or not really understanding how they're working or behaving, but making up a new story, I guess it is, about why they're behaving that way. It's like, I'm not going to take this personally. I'm going to assume that something else is going on in their life that's, giving them that trouble and making them react this way. And at some point I will talk to them about it. Maybe it's straight away or maybe it's later, and go, okay, tell me why you're this angry, or tell me what's going on. So all of these things that are invisible to all of us can make people behave in quite erratic ways sometimes. So I think if you don't know for certain whether someone is anxious, depressed, on the spectrum, or something else, then you have no right to judge their behaviour, is my view. If someone said to you, I don't have any of these things, so therefore I'm a neurotypical, fully formed, functioning, perfectly, perfect person, and they're still being a dickhead, then you can be like, no, I'm not going to forgive you for that. But as a kind of example, so I'm not diagnosed as Asperger's, but I definitely have a lot of the traits, the other kind of the spectrum traits. these are like sensory things for me. So as an example, in a room, if I have like weird noise going on and like that, like that's like really distracting for me. And if someone's talking to me and then someone else is talking right in my ear, I can't concentrate at all. And it might appear rude that I'm not like listening to someone or I'm not paying attention, but actually I'm just really struggling. If there are, this is all right, this room, this is a bit crazy, but if there are like quite hard lines in a room or squares, then my vision just goes really weird as well. So like things like that, no one's going to say, hey, by the way, I'm experiencing all these things right now, so just give me a bit of space or whatever, or give me a bit of understanding. No one's going to say that. They're just going to suffer through it in silence or use the coping mechanisms that they've developed. So it's just that kind of that generosity and sort of like thinking, there might be something going on with this person that means that they're not able to relax into the situation or whatever. I've got some other like things here. Let me just make sure I've covered everything. Oh no, that was it. So generosity, and then building trust. So be generous, try to give them the benefit of the doubt, and then I was going to get one of these, but I might not. I might just use this. Oh, see, I just press it too many times and then... Okay, cool. So hopefully you all know how to build trust with your team, but these are the kind of 3 things that I picked out. So, listening to someone, really getting the time to actually allow them to open up. The other thing I would say is if you suspect that someone's on the spectrum, you can't exactly go, hey, are you on the spectrum? But actually learning, and I think in our industry there are a lot of people that are, and learning a bit more about what autism is and how it can manifest in people is really, really valuable. Like, it's been so helpful for me. And I don't, I walk around thinking, they could be on the spectrum, but I don't walk around going, hey, I think you're on the spectrum and I think that's why you're behaving like that. So I don't talk about it, but find some kind of common ground and understanding, and start with small things in order to build trust. Oh yeah, so the guy who walked me to the wall like this. So I did manage to build trust with him in the end, and the way that I did it was just by diligently doing my job and communicating, over communicating with him, being very transparent and just kind of consistently delivering in terms of, I was doing project management at the time, and by the end of that work, it was like a 6-month contract. He was like, I never really understood what project managers were for, but now I get it. And I was like, take that as a massive compliment coming from you. So yeah. And then, hopefully you can get to the point, if you've been generous and built trust, that you can then start to improve the situation. So my kind of, I guess, tips on improving stuff is just to kind of check on the moment and the environment where you want to address working with difficult people. So, if it's someone who's being super aggressive, like, think about when you choose to talk to them. Like, maybe don't choose when they've just had a really bad day, or they've been out all night on the Raz or whatever. Like, choose your moment, and the space that you're in as well. Like, maybe it's better to kind of go out to a cafe, or maybe it's not better. Maybe it's better if it's in the office or whatever. And then so I like to prioritize the real problem areas. That's just prioritization. Hopefully you all know how to do that. And I also just start on the kind of the really small things as well, just to chip away slowly at them. And oh yeah, and invite feedback, and also the last one's kind of similar. So give feedback with radical candor. Does everyone know the radical candor book? Hands up if you've heard of it. Okay, so really, really great book about giving and receiving feedback. It's called Radical Candor, and the principle, the main bit that you need to know is to give good quality feedback is to care personally and challenge directly, and definitely worth a read for absolutely everyone, because it's a really good way of being able to tell people that you're being able to give people feedback without it coming across as insincere or overly critical. So yeah, very good resource. And actually, yeah, so there was a lot of content in the Radical Candor book that resonated with me. And one of the jobs that I left recently, I bumped into a couple of the developers at a networking event, and James was like, "Oh yeah, we were just talking about you the other day," and I was like, "Oh God, what did you say?" He's like, "Yeah, we were saying how you were really good at telling us that we were really shit, but making us feel good about it." And I was like, "Awesome." So yeah, what else have I got? So that's kind of it. Oh look, I've done really well on the time as well. Oh, things to remember. This is just going to come in one by one. So learn and empathize, be generous, build trust, improve slowly, and oh yeah, and one more thing actually, like be safe and look after yourself. Like some environments I think are kind of too toxic, or you might not be in a good place to be able to deal with them. So don't take the onus on you to solve every single problem. Like, you have to actually look after yourself as well. So if a situation you think is just too difficult, or a person is too vile, and it's really affecting you personally, then get yourself out of that situation, because it's great to be generous with people and to try and smooth over the cracks, if you like, or make things work. But actually, if it's going to affect you personally in a very negative way, then just don't do it. Just look after yourself. And that's it. That's it from me.